I trusted my wife with our finances, and she didn't pay taxes, secretly racked up $9,000 in credit card debt, and secretly ate out at restaurants while I ate broccoli to pay off the debt. I met Emma back in high school, the kind of meeting that didn't feel like fate or fireworks but something quieter, something steady and warm that slowly wrapped itself around my life without me even noticing. We started dating when I was 17 and she was 16, just kids figuring ourselves out, but even then there was something about her that made everything else feel less complicated. She had this way of looking at me that made me believe I could be better, and I think I held on to that more tightly than I realized. A few years later, when most of our friends were still jumping between college majors and part-time jobs, we got married. I was 21 and she was 20. Everyone around us said it was too early, that we were rushing into something we didn't fully understand, but we didn't care. We were sure of our choice, sure of each other. We rented a small house in Ohio, nothing special, just peeling paint, old floors that creaked under your feet, and a backyard that needed more work than we could give it, but it was ours. And in that little space we started to build a life, piece by piece, like we had all the time in the world. I immediately decided that Emma would be the one in charge of our finances, not because I didn't care, but because she came from a family that knew how to make every dollar stretch, and I trusted that instinct in her completely. Her parents had always been meticulous with money, clipping coupons, tracking every expense, investing wisely, and finding deals in places I didn't even know existed. They didn't just manage money, they understood it, treated it like a quiet game they had mastered. I, on the other hand, had always hated dealing with finances. For me, money was just something I earned through hard work, something that came and went, and the idea of budgets or spreadsheets made my head hurt. My job demanded enough from me as it was, and the last thing I wanted was to bring that stress home. So I handed that part of our life to her without hesitation, believing that between us, we had the balance we needed, her structure, my focus, and the life we were slowly shaping together. I started out working as a freelancer, picking up whatever projects I could find to keep us afloat, and eventually landed a full-time job that gave our life a bit more structure, a bit more breathing room. Emma was still in college then, balancing classes with a part-time job that brought in maybe $20,000 a year, if that, and from the beginning, I never once resented it. I knew what we had agreed to, and I meant it when I said I wanted to support her while she pursued her degree. I was proud of her, proud that she was working so hard, and it mattered to me that she knew she could lean on me during those years. It wasn't always easy, we weren't rich by any stretch, but we made it work, splitting responsibilities in our own way, her managing the money, me bringing most of it in. It felt like a partnership, and for a while that was enough. She signed up for several credit cards, each one offering cashback or miles or some kind of perk that, according to her, would benefit us in the long run if we were smart about it. She explained it with that calm, confident tone she always used when it came to numbers, saying that as long as we paid off the balances in full every month, we'd be ahead. Free travel, money back, extra bonuses for spending we were going to do anyway. I didn't question it. I didn't ask for details or track the accounts. I just trusted her, the way I always had, believing that she knew what she was doing, believing that we were still the same team we had always been. Emma also agreed to handle my quarterly taxes back when I was freelancing, something I had always dreaded and barely understood, and it felt like such a relief to pass that responsibility to someone who seemed to know what she was doing. I would calculate the amount I owed, tell her the number, and every time she would nod and say, "I'll take care of it," with the same ease she used when picking up groceries or managing our bills. I never double-checked, never looked at receipts or confirmation emails, because I was just happy not to deal with the stress of tax forms and deadlines. It felt like one less weight on my shoulders, and I trusted her without hesitation, believing that in our partnership, we each had our roles and this was hers. And then, while preparing our annual tax return, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of forms and a dull ache in my stomach, I discovered that not a single quarterly payment had ever been made. Line after line showed zeros where there should have been records, and as the realization sank in, so did the panic. We owed the IRS several $1,000s, not just in unpaid taxes, but in penalties and interest that had quietly stacked up while I believed everything was under control. I went straight to our savings account, hoping we had enough to cover it, but it was empty. Every cent we had tucked away for emergencies or a future down payment was gone, drained without a word. We had to apply for a payment plan just to cover the shortfall, taking on another $5,000 in installments that would follow us for months. I sat in that moment, staring at the numbers, stunned not just by the debt but by the betrayal woven into it, the quiet, deliberate choice to let me believe everything was fine when it wasn't. She was crying when I confronted her, her face buried in her hands as she kept repeating that she didn't understand the system, that it had all been too confusing, that she thought she had done it right. I wanted to believe her because believing her meant believing that we were still okay, that this was just a misstep in a long path we were still walking together. So we sat down and rewrote our entire budget, trimming every non-essential, tracking every dollar, and for the first time in years I started watching the money myself. I picked up a few extra projects, worked longer hours, told myself it would be temporary, that this was what love looked like, showing up in the middle of a mess and building your way out together. I convinced myself it had been just a big mistake, a painful one but forgivable. But as the months went on, I began to notice cracks that no longer looked accidental. The numbers didn't add up. Payments were delayed. Promises were made and quietly broken. And slowly, I started to understand that what had happened wasn't just a mistake. It was a pattern. And it was only getting worse. When we were getting ready to move, packing boxes and sorting through years of shared belongings, I decided to check our credit information just to be safe before signing the lease on our new place. That's when I discovered that our credit history had taken a serious hit, the kind of damage that doesn't happen overnight. I dug deeper and checked the statements, and there it was, almost $5,000 in debt sitting on a single credit card I hadn't even realized we were still using. I asked Emma about it, trying to keep my voice calm even though I felt the floor slipping out from under me, and she shrugged it off with a nervous laugh and said she almost missed a payment this month, like it was no big deal, like it had nearly slipped through the cracks. And I believed her again because part of me still clung to the idea that she wouldn't lie to me, that this too was just another oversight, another stumble in a life that had always felt just a little out of balance. I wanted to believe that love could explain the chaos, but deep down, something in me had already started to question everything. Until one day, everything unraveled in a way that felt sudden but had probably been building for years, when I sat down at our shared computer to check an email and accidentally opened a browser tab she had left logged in. It was a credit card statement, bold and unmistakable, sitting right there on the screen with a balance of $4,900. Before I could even process what I was looking at, she walked into the room, saw the screen and screamed, "Close it!" her voice sharp with panic. But I had already seen it. I turned to her, stunned, heart pounding, and for a moment neither of us said a word. Then she started crying, not quietly, but in the full collapse of someone who had been hiding too much for too long, and through her tears she finally admitted that the situation had gotten completely out of control. She had been making minimum payments, moving balances, hoping it would fix itself somehow, terrified to tell me just how bad it had become. And in that moment, all the cracks I had tried so hard to ignore came crashing down around us. She also turned the blame on me in the middle of all that unraveling, her voice still thick with tears as she accused me of starting to earn less when I left freelancing and took the office job, as if that somehow explained the mounting debt and missed payments. But the truth was, my income hadn't gone down at all. If anything, it had gone up. What changed was that a portion of it now went to taxes, to my 401k, to health insurance and other deductions that didn't exist when I was self-employed. I tried to explain that, to show her that the numbers were still strong, that we were doing better financially than ever before, at least on paper. But she didn't want to hear it. She clung to the narrative that I had brought in less, as if that could justify the secret debts or erase the lies she had fed me for years. And in that moment, it became painfully clear that somewhere along the way we had stopped being a team. We created a detailed budget in a special app, the kind that tracked every dollar and color-coded our spending into neat little categories that felt like control, even if it was just an illusion. We sat down together, listing every debt and drafting a repayment plan that would take months to clear but gave us something to hold on to. We stopped eating out, no more spontaneous dinners or lazy takeout nights. I cooked at home, made grocery lists and stuck to them religiously. I canceled all of my subscriptions, even the small ones that brought me comfort, and instead of going to the gym, I started running in the park every morning, telling myself that fresh air was better anyway. Every part of our life shrank down to numbers and limits, to what we could afford and what we had to sacrifice. We both had to save money, and for a while, it felt like we were fighting the same battle again. But the silence that followed never felt like peace, it felt like survival. But even as we followed our new budget and tracked every expense, something inside me kept whispering that there was more, that she was still hiding something from me, and no matter how much I wanted to believe we were finally on the same page, the unease never left. A month later, when she was out running errands, I sat down and checked the accounts myself, bracing for the numbers to confirm what she had told me. Instead, what I saw made my stomach drop. The balance on the American Express card wasn't $400 like she had sworn, it was $3,500, already creeping toward its limit. And it didn't stop there. Another $1,000 had disappeared from a separate account that was supposed to be dedicated to monthly payments, an account we had both agreed to treat as untouchable. I stared at the screen, my hands cold, realizing that no matter how many plans we made, no matter how much I cut back or sacrificed, the truth was still slipping through the cracks she refused to seal. While I was eating broccoli and chicken every night, trying to stretch groceries across the week and convincing myself that discipline was progress, she was ordering Starbucks on the way to class, eating out at cafes, and casually buying things online like we weren't drowning in debt. It wasn't just carelessness, it was deception. I checked the budget app we had been using religiously, the one that was supposed to bring us transparency and trust, and there it was. She had entered a payment of $1,000 toward our debt, a bold line of hope in a sea of red, except it never actually happened. The money hadn't left our account, the balance hadn't changed, and that number was nothing more than a lie she typed in to make it look like she was keeping her promises. I stared at it, not even angry at first, just stunned by the effort it took to lie so neatly, so confidently, as if hiding the truth was easier than facing it with me. When I found out the full scope of it, when I added up the numbers on every statement and saw them staring back at me in black and white, I felt physically ill, like my body was rejecting the truth my mind had just confirmed. In total, we were in debt by $13,600, $9,400 on credit cards and another $4,200 owed to the IRS, still lingering from taxes that were never paid. The numbers were staggering, but what broke me wasn't just the debt, it was the betrayal buried inside every line. She had looked me in the eyes after the first collapse, after the tears and the apologies and the promises to change, and she had continued to lie to me for weeks, maintaining the illusion that she was doing better, that we were rebuilding. I had believed her because I wanted to, because I thought love meant forgiveness and partnership and holding on when things got hard. But in that moment, sitting with the evidence, I realized I had never felt so profoundly betrayed in my entire life. I still love Emma, and despite everything, we haven't broken up. We share a home, a history, and a version of the future that we're still trying to hold together, even if it looks different now. But the truth is, I don't trust her financially anymore. That part of our relationship, the quiet foundation where money and honesty once met, is gone. I keep all the accounts myself now, every password, every statement, every transaction passing through my hands, not out of spite but out of necessity. We started going to therapy together, trying to peel back the layers of how we got here, trying to understand what went wrong beyond the numbers. She's taken more hours at work, contributing more, showing up in ways that feel like effort, like apology. We are working on ourselves, both of us. But trust, once broken that deeply, never comes back in the same shape. It's not a clean slate, not a fresh start. It's something patched and stitched, held together by choice rather than certainty. And while I still love her, I know now that love doesn't erase betrayal. It just learns how to live beside it.